This is the Rebel Author Podcast, where we talk about books, business, and occasionally bad words. Hello, Rebels, and welcome to episode 256 of the Rebel Author Podcast. Today, I'm talking to an in-real-life friend, a very old friend, Helen Glynn Jones, all about her publishing journey, both from indie to traditional publishing. But first, to a comment on Emily's episode. Cassie Newell said, great interview and really enjoyed the discussion of different ways to publish and leaning into what you enjoy. The discussion on what you have to do versus what works for you is something we should all think about as we work through our careers because it changes as we go. Don't forget, I really do love seeing your comments. So if you have a little something you want to say about the episode, please do pop them either anywhere you like, really. Instagram is probably best, but yeah, we will read them out next week. So in personal news and updates then, I am now back from New Zealand. It is Friday the 16th of August as I record this, and we got back on Tuesday the 13th of August. So I've been back a couple of days. I'll be honest, I am on a pretty normal sleep schedule now, so I'm going to bed 10, waking up at 6, whatever. However, I am still feeling tired in the afternoons, and I'm feeling tired early but trying to force myself to stay awake just for a little bit, and I still feel like I'm waking up a fraction earlier than I would, but I have the remaining, I don't know what the right word is, brain fog, I want to say, from jet lag. It really took it out of me for a couple of days, but I am definitely on the mend and heading back to normal now. So I know that last week I was basically catatonic and falling asleep as I was trying to do the podcast. So I thought I would give a kind of brief summary of New Zealand, which was fucking epic. I think New Zealand is possibly one of the most beautiful countries I've ever had the privilege of visiting. The kind of geography and weather was wild. The landscape maybe is a better word, but you'd sort of go over a hill and it would be brown, kind of dry, and then you'd go over, or you'd turn to the left and it would be snow-capped mountains, and then you'd look behind you and it would be greenery everywhere. There were kind of these, what felt like to a British person, rainforest areas, but I don't think they are. I think they're more temperate forests, but certainly the foliage wasn't like a British forest. And then we went round the fjords, we did Hobbiton. There are so many things that I couldn't recount all of them. If you haven't been following my Instagram and you would like to see some photos, there were quite a few reels and things on there where I shared photos. Truly one of the most fantastic trips I've ever done and ever had. And the lovely thing is, I genuinely did not open my laptop for 3 weeks. I didn't open it until a couple of days before we had to go to the conference, which was at the end of our trip. And it really was the break that I needed. And I think looking back, I was probably closer to burnout than I was willing to admit. I am very much not anywhere near burnout now. I think that's one of my secret superpowers is I can get real fucking toasty crisp on the outside, and a little bit of rest pulls it right back for me. And so I've come back really raring to go. I was a little bit confused when I first got back because I wasn't highly motivated, despite the fact that I had obviously had a lot of time off, and that's very unusual for me. So I talked to my strengths coach and kind of realised that it was essentially because I hadn't decided the goals. I've had huge changes this year, huge financial changes. One thing I'm going to share with you guys, this tax year, I've already beaten last tax year. So this tax year is going to be fucking wild. I have no idea where we're going to end up, but it all really I don't know, it changes like the mindset. You guys heard the sort of episode that I did, and it has made me reassess goals. And that's what I was kind of doing in New Zealand. And what I realized is that I'm really not done yet. Like, I have a lot more work I want to do with Ruby. You know, I've broken the top 1,000, but I haven't broken the top 750, the top 500, the top 250. You know, it would be a dream come true to break the top 100, let alone any higher. I can't even fathom that. But, you know, I am super competitive, and that is something I still want to do. And I want to do it with lesbian romance, because it's hard for such a niche to get into the top 100. So yeah, I still do want to do those things, which means I need to continue writing books and continue delivering to reader and basically, you know, growing my audience and doing all the things that I'm already doing. So I feel like I have reestablished the fact that I'm doing the right thing. I'm very happy doing this, and I want to continue to do it for, you know, at least a while. Now, in terms of what happens, say, like after the next 3 to 5 years, I don't know. And I don't think I want to plan. I want to see what happens and how I feel. Now, the other thing that I kind of realised in New Zealand is, because we spent so much time doing fun things as a family, I realised that, and this will not be a surprise to you, I have not been doing enough fun things at home. So I want to, you know, spend more time, well, 1, reading, 2, doing the gym, but maybe finding some more hobbies. I really, really enjoyed the dark sky experience in New Zealand, and one of the things I always wanted as a kid was a telescope, and I now have adult money. So I'm thinking I might try and find like an astronomy club or something. I'm not sure. And I've also signed up for a subscription to New Scientist, because it's one of the magazines that I used to love reading, and I stopped, and I don't really know why. And so, yeah, I've signed up to that. I absolutely bloody love it. I'm a bit of a science nerd. If I hadn't have done the arts, I probably would have been in sciences. Well, yeah, obviously I've got a degree in psychology, but, you know, I also looked at medicine once upon a while as well. Okay, so what else did I realise? The other thing that I realised is that I absolutely need to get more in-person friends. I adore all my friends all the way across the world, but I am extremely isolated. And I need to find some people that I can just have a coffee with, or just, I don't know, go to the pub or whatever. I need to do more in-person things. I need more in-person contact. I'm very, very happy working for myself, working on my own. I'm very, very happy having long amounts of time on my own, but I think I have become too isolated. And the problem with only having contact time at conferences is that they are so far the other end of the spectrum in terms of people contact, that they then completely shaft me and fuck me up, because it's an excess of people time. So I need to find some kind of balance in the middle where I get a little bit of people time every so often, and then, you know, maybe I won't struggle so much with the conferences, because it won't be like going from 0 to 1,000 miles per hour overnight. So I'm feeling good, I'm feeling refreshed, and I'm very, very pumped to get back to work. The Rebel of the Week this week is Lisa. Lisa says, growing up, I was a very proper, rule-abiding young girl. I was the oldest of my siblings and the oldest of my cousins by several years. So I didn't have any role models to help me work up the nerve to break the rules. I wore the dresses and tights I hated. I didn't swear or smoke or get drunk. I'm fairly certain I was never even grounded. The one thing that I really, really wanted to do as a young teenager was take a martial arts class. My mother refused to allow me to take the class, as that is something only boys did. Naturally, she put my younger brother in that class. Later, as an older teenager, the field I really, really wanted to study in college was linguistics, but my mother said I needed a realistic job and told me to stick to teaching or nursing. Whoa! Wow, I don't even know what to say at this point. So I picked teaching, which I hated. I stuck with the classes for a year, then I dropped out and enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. Fucking love this. Not only did I get plenty of martial arts training, the job I enlisted for What's linguistics? You fucking legend. She didn't see that coming. Neither did I. Bloody love that, Rebellion. Abso-fucking-lutely brilliant. Thank you so much for sending that in. If you would like to be a Rebel of the Week, please do send in your story. It can be any kind of rebellion, something big, something small, or something in between. And we are always low on Rebel stories, so please do send them in. You can email your Rebel story to Becca over on rebelauthorpodcast@gmail.com. No new patrons this week, but an enormous thank you to all of my existing ones. If you would like to support the show and get early access to all of the episodes, as well as bonus content like our Poison and Prose writing question and answer session, which is next week as I record this, or our masterclasses, of which the next one is being taught by me, and it is on writing sex scenes, sweet and spicy, and one of our books is sat on my desk as I've half deconstructed it already, which is The Antihero by Sarah Kate. This episode is sponsored by Kobo Writing Life, Kobo's free, fast and easy self-publishing platform. KWL was built by authors for authors, and their team of dedicated book lovers is always working hard to help you reach new readers around the world. With this in mind, Kobo has developed a way for authors to reach audiobook listeners with direct audiobook upload. You can now publish an audiobook right in your Kobo Writing Life account as easily as you can publish an ebook. You can create a customizable table of content, set the price in 16 different currencies, and even set up a pre-order for your audiobook with no date limitations. There's no exclusivity, and you will always have control of your pricing. And once your audiobook is published, there are lots of promotional opportunities. Kobo even have customizable social assets that you can download to share on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, making it even easier for you to reach this growing market. If you're a KWL author and don't yet have access to the audiobooks tab or the promotional mailing list, email the team at writinglife@kobo.com and they'll hook you up. Don't forget, you can purchase audiobooks on kobo.com and they will download directly to your free Kobo app or e-reader. If you want to learn more about KWL, check out the Kobo Writing Life podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts, and find them on social. Create your free account today at kobo.com/writinglife. Okay, that's it from me. Just one little note and apology. In my exhausted state when I recorded this, it's picked up the wrong microphone, so I sound particularly tinny this time. Helen's recorded on a good mic, thankfully. So apologies that my audio isn't up to scratch on this episode. Hopefully that won't happen again.
Hello and welcome to the Rebel Author Podcast. Today I'm joined by Helen Glynn Jones. Helen writes about kissing and dragons and vampires, as well as spicy contemporary romance under the name Isadora Love. She's also had short stories appear in several anthologies and publications. Born in the UK, Helen has since lived in both Australia and Canada. A few years ago, she returned to her native England, where, when she's not writing stories, she likes to hunt for vintage treasures, explore stone circles, and watch the sky change colour. She currently lives in Hertfordshire. Hello and welcome.
Hello.
And for listeners, Helen has been on a previous episode, but I can't remember the number of it because it wasn't a solo show. So that normally I would ask you, I would talk about the solo episode that you're on, because it wasn't solo. I thought I wouldn't do it this time because it's like this is your first interview. And what's more, Helen and I are IRL friends in real life. And we met, I don't even know how long ago now. How long has it been? Like a decade? Must have been a decade.
Yeah, it was 2015 we met in person for the first time.
Okay, so we had some time before that online.
Yeah, I think we've been online. Yeah, so it's coming up a decade. Crazy.
OMG, that is crazy. Okay, well, this isn't about me, it's about you. So would you like to tell everyone a little bit about you and your journey? Because you've had a fucking roller coaster of a ride. And you've gone from indie to trad. You also do ghostwriting. So yeah, tell everyone a little bit about the journey, how long the journey has been. And then kind of like maybe why you chose to do the routes that you did.
Yeah, so the journey, yeah, it's been long, like longer than our friendship. It's crazy.
And that's long.
That's long, so long. Um, yes, I've been a freelance writer for almost 2 decades, which is crazy. I started writing my own books around 2012. And I did when I was so naive when I started out. I thought, yeah, I'm going to go try out. I'm just going to write this book and I'm going to send it out and I'm going to get an agent. It's all going to be sweet and that's going to be amazing. So I started querying in, I want to say like 2013, 2014. I started querying my first book and I did get some pull requests, but I was just incredibly uninformed about the whole process and the market and everything. No one took it on, and I decided to start a blog, which is
What
how I met
what
you.
what book was it? Was it
Oh, so
your
this was Oakham Mist, which is
okay.
the first book I ever wrote. Um, which is a portal fantasy. And just because I was starting out, I thought, well, I'm going to start out with a 6 book series. So that's what I did.
Yep.
you
With
know,
no
you know
proof
how it
of
is.
like sales concept, nothing. Yeah, we all
Yeah,
do that. Yeah.
just going for it.
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of words. Here it comes. So obviously trad did not work out at the time. And then I started blogging, which is where you and I met. And I learned about the indie market and I decided to self-publish. And so, yes, I've got 6 self-published books out, which have, been received pretty well, which is nice. And then I kept writing though, and I started writing The Last Raven years ago, which is my trad book that's coming up soon. Um, Again, queried it multiple times, multiple pull requests, lots of interest in this one, but no takers. And I thought about self-publishing, but I decided to hang on to it. Something just said to me, just hang on to it because the market wasn't right. It was a vampire book and it just wasn't the right market at the time. Um, and then I wrote another book during lockdown called The City of Wings and Gold, which you have read.
Ah.
And I have the unhinged text messages to prove it. And that got me my agent, who is Laura Bennett at Liverpool Literary. And that went on sub, did not sell. And then I said to her, hey, I've got this vampire book. And she went, oh, yeah. Um, she read it really quickly and was just like, yeah, we have to put this out on sub. And about 4 months later, we had an offer from One More Chapter asking if it could be a series. And I was like, oh, yes, it can. Absolutely. So I had the offer meeting with them, and it all sort of happened really quickly after that. I also sold into contemporary romance books at the same time. So they ended up buying 4 books from me with first refusal on my next 2 as well, which was amazing. It was kind of like, it was like 10 years of just being told, nope, 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 nope. And then all of a sudden, yes. And with a big 5 imprint and a 4 book deal, which has just been the most extraordinary journey. I'm really pleased that in a way though that I've had this experience, that I've been out there, that I've been in the indie thing and I've put my series out there. I learned a lot as an author. And I think if you read the Ambeth Chronicles, which is my fantasy series, you will actually see my journey as an author as you go through the books, as how my craft has evolved and my storytelling has evolved. And I think it's actually a pretty common pathway to publishing for a lot of people. Like I was recently at a big trad event in London with a lot of authors, and so many of them had indie titles as well. And I think that's the great thing about where the industry is now, is that you do have these options. It used to be that if you wrote a book and nobody wanted it, the book was gone. You put it in a drawer and you forgot about it. Whereas now we've got the option to indie publish. There's a lot of great small presses. There's so many options now, and I just think that's really cool.
I actually forgot that it was City of Wings and Gold that got you the deal. that got you the agent, and then it was Raven that sold. Now, before we kind of go into some of the lessons learned and the things that you've kind of taken away, I think we have to tell people the journey of how The Last Raven got written, because I have followed this book for probably almost as long as I have known you. And from the start, I would like to say, somebody did say this book will be trad published one day, didn't they? I don't know who that was.
Yes, they did. I don't
guess who that was.
I don't know who it was. Who it was who said to me, hang on to it, hang on to it.
Yeah, somebody believed in that book right from the start. But we'll forget that person. Let's
they are in the acknowledgements.
Oh, biggest fan, number one fan. But go on, explain how it came to be, because I think this is such a wonderful story, because I think story as a whole is so magical. It's almost magic where stories come from, and no two stories have the same origin. And I just think this one is so cool.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It is like magic, isn't it? When you get that story.
Yeah.
It comes to you.
I'm not going to tell you where it was, but I was somewhere yesterday and a story idea came to me, and you're going to piss your pants when I tell you. I'm going to tell you afterwards. Remind me to tell you, because it is so funny, okay. Especially when I tell you where it was. But it's just so random, and it just they just come out of nowhere. I really sometimes believe that they are gifts from the muse gods.
Oh, absolutely. Like if you read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, she talks about that a lot. And she was talking about a poet who I cannot remember the name, but she said that she would be out in the fields working and she would feel a poem sort of flying across the fields towards her, and she would have to catch it as it went past. I just think, it's magic. It really is. Right. So Raven started as a blog prompt back in the day. And I think like my early blogging days, so like 2015 maybe. And Ali Isaac, who you and I both know, her blog at the time, she did a little prompt for Halloween, and the prompt was the word monster. And she just wanted a little piece of flash fiction. And I was like, humans are pretty monstrous. And I thought I was going to what I wanted to do was write a story about a human who was a monster. And this girl appeared who was human, and her doting mother and her distant father, and they sort of appeared in this little piece of flash fiction, and her parents were vampires and she was not. She was human. She was like a genetic throwback, because vampires were originally human. So occasionally in this world they could give birth, and they gave birth to a human child. And it was just this little piece of flash fiction, but it kind of stuck around. And then Kyle appeared, and then I was like, ooh, okay, this is getting legs now. I feel like there's a love story here, but it's also going to be about finding your own power, because she is the most powerless person in her world, and she has to find her way to who she really is. And then even then, though, I think like I was just writing little blog posts with like snippets of it that would come to me, and
certain people kept asking you for more.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, I think about after a year of this, you were like, for fuck's sake, will you please just send me some more of this? And I was like, okay. And I think you really encouraged me, because at the time I had a lot going on and I wasn't writing much at all. And you were basically going, please, will you email me the next few chapters of this book?
Yeah.
So I kept writing it, and I think so by the end of 2017, it was a fully fledged novel. And
to this date, so listeners know I don't reread. Okay. I do not reread. And this book, I think I've read this book more than I've read my own fucking book. Maybe with the exception of Keepers, only because of the amount of times I rewrote it. But I think it is second only to that. And I think I counted 5 times I've reread it. Cover to cover, which is a record, because I don't even reread my own books that many times before they go to print.
I know, I feel very honored.
Yeah, like everybody, if that isn't like encouragement to go and buy and read this fucking book. I don't know what it is.
Thank you. Thanking you. It's I thought 4 times, but yeah, 5 sounds
No,
about
I think
right.
it was 5. I think I remember reading it 5 times. And obviously they were different iterations each time.
Yeah, because that's the thing with this book. Like I pulled it apart and I put it back together again, and just the story, the original book, like the premise is still there, but the actual story. And I think even if you did read the copy that I'm going to send you, if you did decide to read that,
do you know what?
It will be a different book again.
I probably will, but maybe once all 3 are done, I will then reread everything. But I wanted to ask you, do you remember what the original scene was, the original flash fiction? Was it in the classroom?
No, it was
in the corridors. I swear, like
no, she was in her I think she was going to bed, she was going to sleep, and her parents were going out because it was Halloween, and she didn't want to go out for Halloween because everyone was going to call her names and be like, dirt eater, and just be quite cruel to her. And she wanted her mother to change her, and her mother wouldn't change her into a vampire.
That was it. That was it. Yeah.
And she and you sort of don't know what the issue is until right at the end, when she feels her mother kisses her and she feels a little prickle of fangs. And then her mother, I mean, they do not change into bats in the book that's coming out now, but in that little piece of flash, I think her mum did change into a bat. Just it was like a big reveal at the end. I don't know. But yes, that was the thing, was it was Halloween and she didn't want to go out, and that was why, because she was already a monster. She didn't feel like celebrating.
Oh, so good. I literally can't fucking wait to hold a copy of this book. Okay, let's talk about pitching, because you had a long journey pitching. And I think people who want to go trad underestimate the resilience and strength that is required to actually get across that finish line. Because I think what happens is, in this community, we have a lot of loud voices, and we see the unicorns who get picked up on their first query, or, their first 5 queries or whatever. And I just don't think that's realistic to the average experience of an author trying to go traditionally published. So what are like your biggest takeaways from pitching? How long, just remind me how long it took. And I suppose, can you tell me about the hardest part of that process, and maybe like any mindset issues you have? I know that's a lot of different questions, but just talk to me.
Yeah, querying. Oh my God. Yeah, I 100% agree. Like, it's really hard when you're on social media and people are like, oh, I queried for 4 months and I got my agent and then my book sold in a week. Like, that is unicorn stuff. It's wonderful and good on those people. But for the majority of people, it is a slog, and it is called the trenches for a reason, because it's really, really hard. I think, when I saw your question on this, my initial biggest takeaway was that I would rather write a 100K novel than a blurb and synopsis of said novel, because they are the devil's work. I just like, no, please don't make me write a synopsis. And especially, when agencies are like, oh, we just want like a 200-word synopsis. I'm like, what? It's really, really hard. But the hardest part for me was actually the mental health side of it. Like, someone asked me recently what advice I would give to aspiring writers who are wanting to get published, and it would be to take care of yourself and your mental health, because constantly being told, no, you're not good enough, we're not interested, your book is this, your book is that. And also the near misses, like where you get the full request and you get ghosted. That's happened to me. I've been ghosted on like, I think 3 full requests. And I know for some people it's a lot more than that. It can be really hard on your confidence as a writer. And also there's just a mental toll behind constant rejection and criticism. There just is. Doesn't matter what you're doing, if all you're hearing is no and you're not good enough. And I mean, even if they're not saying you're not good enough, that's what you're going to take away from it. And I think it's really important to understand that it's not really a meritocracy. It's yes, of course, good writing and great pitching and a great hook and a great idea. Absolutely. You do need those things. But sometimes it's to do with the market or,
Nine times out of 10, it's to do with the
yeah,
market.
it's to do with the market, right? It's a business. This is a business. And that's the hard part is you have to divorce the personal side of how you are in love with your book and your idea and your concept and why wouldn't anyone want it to the business side of things where people are not necessarily saying your book isn't good. They're just saying it's not right for the market now. And it's a really hard thing to get your head around. Or at least it was for me. It took me a while to get my head around that. And I did, as you know, because you've kind of been with me on this journey, you've seen all the shit. And I've had to take breaks from it for a while to just focus on the art and the writing because the things that keep you going, that was what kept me going, was that magic and fire of a new idea and a first draft and starting something new. That was what kept me going because I love writing and I love storytelling, and I wasn't going to let anything stop me from having that enjoyment. So I think I've lost the question.
No, that's all right. We were talking, we were talking about your biggest lessons from pitching and like that kind of experience. Yeah. I think that's very, very true, and also very honest, because I think a lot of people don't necessarily talk about like the mental health consequences of being rejected like that so many times. And like, I think, community and network and support is really important when you're going through that as well. Don't do it by yourself. Like no writer.
Hugely important. Like, obviously you and I have our friendship anyway, but genuinely, without your support at times just kept me going. And because you understand, you're in the industry as well, but so from a friend point of view, but also from an industry point of view, and just having, as you say, that community around you. And there is some great community to be found on social media for this kind of thing.
There
are people out there. But yeah, I 100% agree. Don't do it alone because it's bloody hard.
Okay, what are like the biggest differences you're experiencing from your time as an indie compared to your time now as a trad author?
So this is kind of an interesting question because I think people have a lot of different experiences with trad and how their publisher works with them. So this is just going from what I've gone through. I worked with an editor on all my indie books, and it was an editor who'd worked in trad. So that side of things hasn't really been that much different. I'm used to the process, and I'm used to, being able to take the feedback and work with it on the story. And I was also fortunate that my publisher did involve me in the cover design. So they talked to me about the concept, and before they went ahead, they talked to me about the illustrator, and then I was able to give my input to the different cover designs that were put forward to say which ones I liked. So in a way, that was quite, I think for some people don't have that experience, but I've been really fortunate. I've got a great publisher in One More Chapter, and it's been a real pleasure working with them. So the biggest difference from a creative point of view was having to write a book to deadline. I had to write the second Raven book to deadline, and I had to actually put that out of my head, because I think if I'd been focusing on the fact I had a delivery date, I probably would have kind of locked up with panic. So I had to kind of just forget all about that and just write the way I usually do for my own sort of joy of the process, and hope I got a book at the end of it in time for my deadline, which I did. I made it. Yeah. And the other difference, like from a promotional point of view, it's been absolutely fantastic to have a huge publishing house behind me. I mean, that's just made a world of difference. I have a worldwide Spanish language rights deal with HarperCollins Iberica, and my book was part of the recent HarperCollins road shows. And there are other developments on the horizon I can't really talk about yet. But these are things that as an indie, I would have found a lot more difficult or possibly impossible to achieve, certainly in my own experience of it. So those probably be the biggest differences.
Okay, like, what have you learned from trad? Because obviously you went through a lot of learning experiences just to get your own indie book to publication. But obviously it's a completely different process with traditional publishing. So I don't know, maybe you've learned something on the business side or the marketing side, or maybe you learned something like from the fact that you've got in-house editors now. Like what lessons have you learned kind of from them and the way that they do things?
Um, so, the book isn't out yet, and we're only really in the early stages of marketing, but it's been interesting. I think what I've learned, the main thing I've learned is about letting go, because you don't have as much control over the process as you do as an indie. That's just a fact. But I know, right? Like I can see your full body shudder.
Oh my God. I think you just reaffirmed why I have to be in a different mindset. Don't get me wrong, I would definitely 100% go trad. I would, but for the right deal, the right money, the right book, the right time, because I would have to let go, like you just said. And
I know. But you know what, though? That has actually been really liberating.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Tell me more.
Because once you let go, you have to let go anyway, right? When your book is published, you let go of it. You're not part of that conversation anymore. The conversation around your book is for readers. It's not really for you, unless you're obviously approached directly about something. But
isn't that a strange experience?
It's such a strange experience, right?
Yeah, because it's like something that was so kind of integral to who we are, like, because our art is a piece of who we are, and we live with it for such a long time, like by ourselves as well. Like nobody else is like in it whilst we're drafting it. And yeah, I don't know, the fact that we then have to completely remove our hands from something that was, for a while, I find, for me particularly, it's very all encompassing. In those few weeks when I'm drafting, nothing else really exists. Like I'm present, but no, I'm functional in life, but I'm not really present, if that makes sense.
100, because you're in that world. You have to step into that world fully. And there's that moment when you are drafting. And for me anyway, there's always that moment where the book lets you in. And then I'm like, oh, okay, I'm in now. And it takes over.
How was it working with in-house editors versus editors that maybe you've worked with indies? Was there any difference? Like, did you feel that you had more to do, less to do? Like, was it hard work? Like, I don't know. What was that craft experience like for you?
Yeah, so it actually made me really enjoy editing. I realized I really enjoyed that side. I know, right? Crazy.
Wow.
Crazy, right? Because, as I said, I had worked with a really good editor for my indie books. But it would be literally like I would get the book as polished as possible and pretty much do a single round of edits, because that's all I could afford. If you want a good editor, you're not, and that's fair enough, because editing is so integral to the finished product as far as I'm concerned. So with this book, with my trad book, I had several rounds of edits, and it went through a few people's hands. So I did 2 rounds with my initial editor, which were mostly developmental, and she didn't really want to change anything about the story at all. But what she made me do was really go deeper. She made me.
Have you got an example of that? Like,
well,
what does go deeper mean?
So go deeper. So there were a couple of scenes that were like romantic scenes, and she got me to really dig into the emotional aspect of the lead up to those scenes a little bit more. So there's a scene where he kisses her for the first time, and she wanted me to really deepen that growing connection between them, because they actually kind of hate each other. He's really rude to her. He's a guard, and she's the heir to the House of Raven, which is the massive vampire family that rules half the planet. And she's human. And so she has to have a guard all the time, which is how she meets this guy, Kyle. He's her new guard. And he is just really rude to her. And she is just like, what is your problem? And there's this growing attraction between them. And the build up to their first kiss is kind of like they're still kind of angry with each other. But she had me really dig into that conversation and see how I could draw those threads even tighter to pull them towards that kiss, like it's inevitable. And there were other things, there were nuances within the plot that she just felt needed to be explained a little more fully, about how the vampire world worked, the one that I've written in this book. Because the thing with vampires is there are certain things that are canon that you have to do with vampires. They drink blood. That's probably the only one, to be honest. They drink blood.
And have fangs.
And have fangs, right? Like that's it. Otherwise, they can be dead, they can be undead, they can be created, they can be born, they can live in the light, they can sparkle, they can live in darkness, they could do whatever the hell. And that's the interesting thing about vampires, because it's such a wide range of things that you can do with them.
Mm-hmm.
So, so that's... and the same thing again, the first time that they, do the business together, she had me again dig into the lead up to that and just really make it flow naturally to get to that point.
Yeah.
So that's from a craft point of view, it's made me consider, because it was so granular, like I added 8,000 words to a story that I thought was really solid. When it was sold, I ended up adding 8,000 words, but it wasn't like I was adding like 1,000 words here and 1,000 words there. It would be like a sentence and then 2 sentences and then 4 sentences. So it was a scene by scene digging down level. So it really taught me a lot about pacing and about making sure that every single scene is absolutely essential to the story and to moving the story and the characters forward. And just being really, really ruthless, which is something, I've worked on a lot, but I got to go to another level. And then, so I had the 2 rounds of edits with her, and then it went to a line and copy edit, which again, that brought up more comments, which I had to address. And then it had a proofread edit, which then brought up comments again. Yeah.
And you also did some changes for your agent, right?
Actually, she didn't. My agent didn't really ask me to change anything in that one. She had a couple of changes in City of Wings and Gold before that went over stuff. But yeah, for Raven, she literally read it in a day and was like, "Please, can we put this on sub now?" So we did.
And let's talk about how many rounds of edits. How many rounds of edits do you think you did yourself? Could you count? Is it possible? Because it's for fucking sure double figures. I read the fucking book 5 times. Oh my god! I don't think in the history of books there has ever been a book that's been. Oh dear.
Do you remember that one edit which was just for filter words?
Yeah, I do. And I just remember the text messages like, how could I possibly have written Y and Z so many times? Oh my god.
Why is the word because in this 73,000 times? I think it was at like 86,000, and I wanted to enter into a competition, and the maximum word count was 80,000. So I got this editing sheet off Twitter or something, and it was like, you can cut out these words, and it was a list of about 50 words, and I had to go through the document. But I got it down to below 80,000 words. So it just goes to show how much you can cut things. But oh my god, that was a nightmare.
The
number between 20 and 100, I would say, for the number of edits that I've done in this book.
Yeah, I really do. I really do think that that is accurate. Okay, let's talk about the query letter and pitching because you have experience doing query letters and pitching. Like, what tips would you have for listeners who are trying to write their own query letters and pitch?
Yeah. Okay. So I got excited when I saw this question because I have written literally hundreds of query letters, and I've been to agent things where they talk about query letters, but this is basically what I've learned. So keep it concise and professional. It's a business document. Address the agent by name. Make sure that your comp titles are recent, so from within the last year or two. And the interesting thing about comp titles too, and this was something I only learned like I was well into the process when I picked this up, was your book doesn't have to be, when you choose a comp title, it doesn't have to be in the same genre. It just has to have an element that's similar. So you can say it has the lush romance of, this book, and it has the mysterious haunting quality of this book, so they can appreciate it. It doesn't have to be specifically in your genre. So that was a big thing for me, but they need to be recent. The pitch blurb in your letter is like the blurb that you would see on the back of the book. So it's just to hook interest, and you can save the plot details for the synopsis and keep your personal information to a minimum and only if relevant. So if you were pitching a book that was set on the high seas and you've actually lived and worked or whatever on the high seas, absolutely mention that because it's relevant. But like, the agent does not need to know that your beta readers loved it or what your favorite cookie is or that your mom thinks you're, amazing or whatever. Which apparently.
But my mom says I'm special.
My mom loved this. You know what I mean? Like it's, keep your personal information to yourself. They don't need to know about your personality quirks unless you're writing a book about a character who has that personality quirk kind of thing. Yeah. So it's and when you're writing the blurb, as I say, it's like the blurb that's on the back of the book. So you just need to make sure that the premise and the stakes are clear. Yeah.
Amazing. Do you think over the years you've ever seen authors do anything wrong whilst approaching trad? Or did you make any mistakes?
I did. Oh my God. I made so many mistakes. Yeah, do you know what the big mistake I made was when I was first querying was word count. So, I hate to say, I don't think that people get things wrong because we all have a different pathway to publication, whether we do indie or trad or whatever, but it is a business. And I think that's what people have to remember. It's about buying and selling stories, which is in a way, it's antithetical to the creative process, which is, these magical stories come to us and we write them. I'm not writing about vampires because I think they're trendy. I just have a vampire story that I need to tell. So you just need to put your business hat on and not take things personally. But there are things that you can get wrong in your pitch. And as I say, I got word count wrong. So when I sent out my queries for my first ever book for Oak and Mist, it was a young adult novel of 150,000 words. I still got 3 fulls.
No way.
Yes. So
how do I not remember that?
Oh my God, it was ridiculous. I think it was because before I met you, I'd already seen the light and split it into 2 books. That was much better. But yeah, so pitching to agents who don't represent your genre, not following the submission guidelines, or pitching something that is wildly outside the standard word count for your genre, because there are standard word counts, and this is for a reason. It's, it's market tested, but it's also to do with print costs as well.
Yeah.
And, just don't give them a reason to say no. They're inundated. Agents are inundated with literally hundreds of submissions a day. So don't give them a reason to look at your query letter and go, oh, it's an epic fantasy at 300,000 words. No, I'm sorry. I can't even start with that. It might be the best fantasy ever written, but because you're so far outside accepted word count, chances are you won't get past that initial query letter. So yeah, I mean, God, you hate to say that anyone's doing anything wrong, but there are just sort of there are guidelines there for a reason, and you can find word count genre guidelines online. There's lots of resources for that kind of thing. So just yeah, that would be my main thing, is don't give them a reason to say no. Follow the guidelines. If they want the first 3 chapters, don't send them the whole book.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about the fact that you also ghostwrite. So what have you learned from ghostwriting that you think you've brought into your craft now?
I think it's actually the other way around. So I wrote for magazines for quite a while when I lived in Australia, for different magazines, and they had different, there was like a wedding one and tourism one and local interests and stuff like that. And the thing that I learned from doing that is about voice and tone, because they all had different tones. It was still me writing all these different articles, but I had to pitch the tone for each article to fit the publication. And in a way, that's kind of what you're doing when you're ghostwriting, because it's not your voice, it's not your book. You're actually taking on the voice of somebody else. And so it wasn't that I've taken anything from ghostwriting to my own craft. It's in fact that I've taken what I've learned through my own craft about how to structure a book, how to pace it, how to use language, how to use words. And also then from my past freelance work, the idea of taking on somebody else's voice and vision, because that's what you're essentially doing. You can't, you can have, like, you don't even have ownership, you're just a conduit for somebody else's ideas. And I'm okay with the work that I've done. I mean, it's been nonfiction, so that's perhaps been easier, because I think with fiction, there might be a tendency to let your own story ideas creep in. I have done collaborative fiction with somebody, but he's it's not really ghostwriting. It was more of a collaborative project where he had an idea and needed somebody to write it for him. So we worked on it together. And so I was able to bring something of myself into that story. But yeah, so that's
is that still going to go ahead? It's a
different thing. Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Okay. All right.
It's on sub. It's on sub. It's on sub at the moment. And then, but I think either way, it'll go ahead in one form or another.
Yeah. Okay, well, this is the Rebel Author Podcast. So tell everyone about a time you unleashed your inner rebel.
Okay. So yeah, like, I don't know. I've always been quite contrary. So I don't know if my rebel is internal so much. But okay, so I was thinking about this, and when I was a teenager, I worked in a mall, and I was working in this shop that sold like handbags and luggage, and it was a nice shop. I worked there part-time, and I had an eclectic dress style, as you often do when you're a teenager. And yeah, so one day the manager took me aside and very nicely explained that my clothing was perhaps a little bit flamboyant for their clientele. And I said, okay, then. And I went out to a vintage clothing shop, and I bought a bunch of sleek black vintage cocktail dresses. And I showed up in one for my next shift, and my manager kind of sighed, and no one ever said anything about my clothing choices again.
Oh, that resigned sigh of like, okay, I'm not going to win this one.
No, she's part-time. Let's let it go.
Yeah. Let's worry about other things. I love it.
It wasn't like I was showing up in like a lion costume or something. I just had a sort of style. Yeah. It was very stylish. I spend a lot of money on clothes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, it doesn't affect your ability to work. That's the other thing. Like, why do people get so het up about it? I don't fucking...
I was making plenty of sales. It wasn't like people were running away from me because I looked like, I don't know, an Edwardian ghost or something. I looked like, I was selling plenty of luggage.
Amazing. Well, would you like to tell everyone where they can find out more about you and your books and anything else you'd like to add.
So I have a blog still, which is sadly neglected, but there's loads of stuff on there and even little snippets of The Last Raven. And the blog is called Journey to Ambeth. I'm featured currently. I'm on the I Am in Print website as a success story. And that, by the way, is a really great resource for querying authors. So check them out anyway.
And what was it?
I Am in Print.
Okay.
I'm on Liverpool. I'm with Liverpool Literary Agency, so I'm on their website as well. And I'm on most of the usual social media channels, which you've got the links for those. The Last Raven is my book that's coming out. At the moment it's looking to be November. I think in the US the paperback is not out till January, but everywhere else it's November, December. And you can pre-order it now. There is a pre-order link. And that's where you can find me.
Amazing.
And, hanging out with you on the WhatsApp.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And of course, a giant thank you to all of the show's listeners and all of the show's patrons. If you would like to get early access to all of the episodes, you can do so by visiting patreon.com/Sasha Black. I'm Sasha Black. You are listening to Helen Glynn Jones, and this was the Rebel Author Podcast.
Next week, when I will be interviewing Estelle van der Velde, and we will be talking all about SEO for authors. Don't forget to tune in and subscribe on your podcatcher. And when you have a moment, please leave a review.